She mocked my birthday gift in front of friends, until she saw the secret inside. I've never been good with gifts, not the giving kind anyway. Sarah always seemed to have this effortless way of finding the perfect thing, something that made you wonder how she'd crawled inside your head and plucked out exactly what you needed without even knowing you needed it. Me? I was the guy who bought flowers from the gas station on the way to dinner, or grabbed whatever was on the clearance rack at Target 5 minutes before the store closed. But this year was different. This year, I had a plan. Sarah's 28th birthday was coming up on a Saturday, and she'd been dropping hints for weeks about wanting to have people over. Not just any people, our people. The whole crew, Marcus and Jenny, who'd been together since college and still acted like newlyweds. David, who never missed an opportunity to remind everyone he was single and loving it. Priya and Alex, the couple who somehow made parenting look effortless while juggling demanding careers. And Tom, our resident wine snob, who insisted on bringing bottles that cost more than my monthly Netflix subscription. Sarah loved being the center of attention in the best possible way. She had this gift for making everyone feel welcome, for turning any gathering into something that felt special and warm. Our apartment wasn't huge, a cramped 2-bedroom in Brooklyn with thin walls and a kitchen barely big enough for 2 people. But when Sarah was hosting, it transformed into something magical. She'd string up those little Edison bulb lights she'd bought on Amazon, light her collection of mismatched candles, and somehow make our hand-me-down furniture look like it belonged in a home design magazine. I'd been thinking about her gift for months, actually, not just thinking, obsessing. We'd been together for 3 years, living together for 1, and I was starting to feel the weight of those unspoken questions that hover around couples our age. Where was this going? Were we building towards something permanent? Did she see a future with me the way I saw one with her? The idea came to me in September, 2 months before her birthday. We were walking through Prospect Park on one of those perfect fall days when the air smells like wood smoke and possibility. Sarah was wearing this oversized cardigan that made her look like she'd stepped out of a coffee commercial, and she was telling me about her day at the marketing firm where she worked. She had this habit of gesturing with her whole body when she talked, her hands painting pictures in the air, her face lighting up with each detail. I just think there's so much more I could be doing, she was saying, kicking at a pile of leaves. Like, I'm good at what I do, but I don't feel, I don't know, fulfilled? Does that sound stupid? It didn't sound stupid at all. Sarah had always talked about wanting to start her own business someday. Something creative, something that would let her help small businesses tell their stories. She had notebooks full of ideas, sketches, business plans written on napkins and the backs of receipts. But she'd never taken the leap. You should do it, I said, like I'd said a dozen times before. Easy for you to say. You have a steady job. I did. I was a software engineer at a tech startup that had somehow survived longer than most. The pay was decent, the work was interesting enough, and my boss didn't breathe down my neck. But Sarah was right. There was a security in my life that she didn't have. Her job was fine, but it wasn't her passion. And passion, I was learning, was everything to Sarah. That night, as we lay in bed listening to our upstairs neighbor's inexplicably loud footsteps, the idea crystallized. I knew exactly what I wanted to give her, and I knew it would either be the most meaningful gift I'd ever given anyone, or it would completely backfire and reveal just how poorly I understood the woman I loved. The next morning, I called my bank. I'd like to set up a separate savings account, I told the representative, a woman with a cheerful voice who sounded like she was genuinely happy to help me navigate automated phone trees at 8 in the morning. What type of account were you thinking? Something I can add money to regularly, with a good interest rate. Are you saving for anything specific? I paused, looking out our kitchen window at the brick wall of the building next door. A business, I said. I'm saving for someone to start a business. Over the next 2 months, I became a man obsessed with small economies. I stopped buying coffee from the bodega downstairs and started making it at home. I canceled subscription services I'd forgotten I had. I ate lunch at my desk instead of going out with coworkers. Every week I transferred whatever I could spare into that account, sometimes $50, sometimes $120 if I'd had a particularly good week. I didn't tell Sarah about any of this. She noticed the coffee situation after about a week. Since when do you make coffee at home? She asked one morning, watching me fumble with our ancient Mr. Coffee machine. Since I realized I was spending $40 a week on coffee that tastes like burned water. She laughed, the sound bright and musical in our small kitchen. Look at you, being all responsible. If only she knew. By November, I had saved $2,300. It wasn't enough to start a business, obviously, but it was enough to make a statement. It was enough to say, I believe in you. I believe in your dreams. I believe in us. Now I just had to figure out how to present it. The gift itself was tricky. I couldn't just hand her a bank statement that would be about as romantic as giving someone a tax return. I needed something tangible, something that would serve as a symbol of what the money represented. I spent hours wandering around stores, looking for inspiration. I found it in the most unlikely place, a vintage shop in Park Slope that smelled like mothballs and old books. Hidden among the costume jewelry and Depression-era furniture was a small wooden box, about the size of a hardcover book but deeper. It looked handmade, with intricate carved patterns along the sides and a brass clasp that had turned green with age. The shop owner, a woman with purple hair and paint-stained fingers, told me she thought it was from the 1940s. It's beautiful, I said, running my fingers over the smooth wood. It's got good energy, she replied, which was exactly the kind of thing I expected someone with purple hair to say. But somehow it felt true. The box cost $60, which felt ridiculous for something I'd found in a dusty corner, but I bought it anyway. That night, I sat at our kitchen table with a bottle of beer and a stack of documents from the bank, trying to figure out how to make this work. In the end, I decided on simplicity. I printed out the bank statements showing the deposits I'd made over the past 2 months, along with a letter I wrote explaining what the money was for. I folded everything carefully and placed it in the box, then added the actual debit card for the account. On top of everything, I placed a small brass key I'd found at a hardware store, not because the box needed a key, but because keys felt symbolic. Keys opened doors. Keys started engines. Keys unlocked possibilities. The week leading up to her birthday was agony. I kept the box hidden in my closet, wrapped in an old t-shirt behind a stack of winter sweaters. Every night, I'd check to make sure it was still there, as if it might have evaporated into thin air. I found myself watching Sarah more carefully, looking for signs that she suspected something, or that she was unhappy, or that she was having second thoughts about us. She seemed normal, though, happy even. She was excited about the party, texting our friends throughout the week to coordinate who was bringing what. Marcus and Jenny were handling decorations. David was in charge of music, which meant we'd be subjected to his eclectic playlist that somehow always included both death metal and show tunes. Priya and Alex were bringing their famous spinach and artichoke dip. Tom was bringing wine, obviously. "What are you contributing to this extravaganza?" Sarah asked me on Thursday night as we lay on the couch watching some cooking show she'd gotten addicted to. "My sparkling personality and devastating good looks." She threw a pillow at me. "I'm serious." "I'm handling the main course," I said, which was true. I'd already ordered sandwich platters from the deli down the street. "So responsible," she said, curling up against my side. "What did I do to deserve you?" The question hung in the air longer than she probably intended. I kissed the top of her head, breathing in the smell of her shampoo, something floral and expensive that she'd gotten as a sample and had been hoarding for special occasions. "I'm the lucky one," I said, and meant it. Friday night, I barely slept. I kept running through scenarios in my head, imagining how she'd react. In the best-case version, she'd open the box, read the letter, and burst into tears before throwing her arms around me while our friends cheered. In the worst-case version, she'd think I was presumptuous or controlling, trying to solve her problems with money like some kind of patriarchal savior complex. By Saturday morning, I was a wreck. Sarah woke up in the kind of mood that people wake up in on their birthdays, effervescent and expectant, like the world owed her something wonderful. She made pancakes shaped like hearts, which was adorable and ridiculous, and she kept humming this song I didn't recognize while she cooked. "You seem happy," I observed, watching her flip a pancake with more flair than was strictly necessary. "It's my birthday," she said, like that explained everything. "The universe is supposed to conspire to make this day perfect." "No pressure," I muttered. "What?" "Nothing. Just thinking about what a high bar that is for the universe." She laughed and slid a plate of heart-shaped pancakes in front of me. They were perfectly golden, the kind of breakfast that looked like it belonged on Instagram. Sarah had always been good at making ordinary moments feel special. The afternoon passed in a blur of preparation. Sarah cleaned with the intensity of someone expecting a visit from Better Homes and Gardens, while I made multiple trips to the deli to pick up food and stopped by the liquor store for backup wine in case Tom's selections weren't enough. By 5 o'clock, Our apartment was transformed. The Edison bulbs cast warm pools of light across the living room. Candles flickered on every available surface, and Sarah had somehow managed to make our mismatched throw pillows look intentionally eclectic. The gift box sat on my dresser, wrapped in simple brown paper with a red ribbon. It looked understated, almost boring compared to the elaborate packages our friends usually brought to these things. I'd thought about buying fancier wrapping paper, something with gold foil or elegant patterns, but in the end, I'd decided that the real gift was what was inside. People started arriving at 6. Marcus and Jenny came first, bearing a gift bag so large it required 2 hands to carry and making enough noise to wake the building. Jenny had this laugh that could carry 3 blocks, and Marcus had never met a joke he couldn't make louder. They were exhausting and wonderful, the kind of couple that made you believe in love even when everything else in the world felt uncertain. "Birthday girl," Jenny shrieked, pulling Sarah into a hug that lifted her off the ground. "You look incredible," Marcus said, which was true. Sarah was wearing this black dress that wasn't fancy, but somehow made her look like she was dressed for a movie premiere. She had a way of making simple clothes look elegant, like she was carrying herself differently than the rest of us. David arrived next, bringing flowers and his usual energy. David was one of those people who seemed to operate at a slightly higher frequency than everyone else, like he'd had one too many cups of coffee but in a charming way. He worked in finance and talked about his job like he was a character in a heist movie, full of dramatic tension and high stakes. "Where's the birthday princess?" he announced, scanning the room until he spotted Sarah arranging flowers in a vase. "I'm not a princess," Sarah called back. "I'm a queen." "My mistake, Your Majesty." Priya and Alex showed up 15 minutes later, apologizing profusely for being late, while their 8-year-old daughter Emma darted between their legs like a tiny tornado. They'd gotten a babysitter for Emma's younger brother, but had decided to bring her along since she and Sarah had a special bond. "Aunt Sarah," Emma launched herself at Sarah with the kind of enthusiasm usually reserved for Christmas morning. "Hey, little love," Sarah said, scooping her up. "Did you help make the dip?" "I stirred it 17 times, Emma announced proudly. Tom arrived last, as always, carrying a wooden wine crate like it contained the crown jewels. Tom was the kind of person who made everything into a production, but in a way that was endearing rather than annoying. He had strong opinions about everything from wine to the proper way to fold fitted sheets, and he delivered these opinions with the confidence of someone who'd never been wrong about anything. "I brought something special," he said, setting the crate down on our coffee table with ceremony. "A 2018 Barolo that I've been saving for a worthy occasion." "It's just my birthday," Sarah said. "Exactly." By 7 o'clock, our small apartment was full of conversation and laughter. Someone had turned David's playlist down to a reasonable volume, and the smell of Priya's dip was making everyone hover near the kitchen. Sarah was in her element, floating between groups, making sure everyone had drinks, laughing at all the right moments. I found myself watching her from across the room, holding a beer I'd barely touched, feeling that familiar mixture of pride and inadequacy that came with loving someone who seemed naturally gifted at being alive. Sarah made everything look easy: conversation, cooking, making people feel welcome. I was better with computers than people, more comfortable debugging code than navigating social dynamics. "You okay?" Marcus appeared beside me, following my gaze across the room. "Yeah, just taking it in." "She's something else," he said, which was Marcus's way of being sincere without getting too deep. "Yeah, she is. You got her something good?" I nodded toward the brown paper package sitting on the side table with the other gifts. "We'll see." "Mysterious. I like it." The evening progressed with the comfortable rhythm of people who'd known each other for years. David told a story about a disastrous client meeting that had everyone crying with laughter. Priya and Alex tag-teamed their way through an explanation of Emma's latest school project, which apparently involved building a volcano that had nearly destroyed their kitchen. Tom held court near the wine, explaining the difference between wines from different regions of Italy with the passion of someone describing their first love. I tried to participate, to be present, but I kept glancing at the gift table. The brown paper package looked so ordinary sitting there among the others. Jenny's enormous bag, Alex and Priya's beautifully wrapped box with professional-looking ribbon, David's flowers in their clear cellophane. Around 8:30, Sarah clapped her hands together. "Okay, everyone, gather around. Gift time." Emma cheered like she was at a sporting event. Everyone else migrated toward the living room, settling onto our couch and the floor with their drinks and plates of food. Sarah positioned herself in the center, cross-legged on the carpet, looking like a kid on Christmas morning. She started with David's flowers, making appropriate appreciative noises and arranging them in a vase with theatrical flair. Jenny's gift was next, a collection of face masks and fancy bath products that Sarah immediately declared exactly what I needed. Marcus had gotten her a cookbook by some chef I'd never heard of, but who apparently was Sarah's current obsession. "This is perfect," Sarah said, flipping through pages of glossy food photography. "I've been wanting this forever." Priya and Alex's gift was a beautiful leather journal with Sarah's initials embossed on the cover. "For your business ideas," Priya said with a knowing smile. "Every entrepreneur needs a place to capture inspiration." Sarah hugged the journal against her chest. "You guys are going to make me cry." Tom's gift was last among the professionally presented options, a wine-tasting experience at some vineyard upstate that he'd apparently researched extensively. "I thought you might want to expand your palate," he said, with his characteristic confidence. "Tom, this is amazing. Thank you." And then there was just my gift left, sitting there in its humble brown paper wrapping. The room had that expectant quiet that comes when everyone's attention is focused on one thing. Sarah reached for the package, and I felt my heart start hammering against my ribs. "From the boyfriend," David announced unnecessarily. Sarah peeled away the brown paper carefully, revealing the wooden box underneath. I watched her face, looking for some sign of recognition or appreciation, but her expression was hard to read. She turned the box over in her hands, examining the carved patterns. "It's old," she said. "Vintage," I corrected, though the word sounded defensive even to me. She opened the brass clasp and lifted the lid. The bank documents were folded neatly on top, with the letter I'd written visible underneath. Sarah picked up the papers, unfolding them slowly. And then she started laughing. Not the good kind of laughing. Not the delighted, surprised kind of laughing I'd been hoping for. This was different, sharp, and uncomfortable, with an edge that made my stomach drop. "Oh my God," she said, holding up the bank statements. Did you give me paperwork for my birthday?" The room went quiet. I felt heat spreading up my neck, the kind of embarrassment that starts in your chest and radiates outward until your whole body feels like it's glowing. "It's not just paperwork," I said, my voice coming out smaller than I'd intended. Sarah was still looking at the papers, that disbelieving smile still on her face. "No, this is bank statements. You gave me bank statements." She looked around the room, including everyone in her amusement. "Can you believe this? Most guys give jewelry or flowers or something romantic. Mine gives me financial documents." Jenny let out a nervous laugh. "I'm sure there's more to it than that." "Is there?" Sarah asked, looking directly at me with raised eyebrows. I felt like I was shrinking into myself, becoming smaller with each passing second. The room felt too warm, too bright, too full of people watching this moment unfold. "If you just read the letter," she repeated, pulling out the folded piece of paper. "Oh good, there's a letter too. What's next, tax forms?" David shifted uncomfortably on the couch. Tom was studying his wine glass like it contained the secrets of the universe. Even Emma seemed to sense the tension, moving closer to her parents. Sarah unfolded the letter, and I watched her eyes scan the first few lines. The letter was 3 pages long, handwritten on the good stationery I'd bought specifically for this purpose. I'd poured everything into those pages, how much I believed in her, how much I wanted to support her dreams, how the money wasn't meant to solve her problems but to give her the freedom to take risks. But she wasn't reading the whole thing. She was skimming, and with each line her expression was becoming more something. Not angry, exactly. Disappointed? Confused? "You opened a savings account," she said, looking up from the letter. "You've been putting money aside for me to start a business." "Yes?" Without asking me. I wanted it to be a surprise. She set the letter down and looked around the room again, that same incredulous smile on her face. "He opened a savings account for me," she announced. "For my birthday. A savings account." I wanted to disappear. I wanted to melt into the couch cushions or evaporate into the candle smoke. Marcus was looking at his hands. Jenny was biting her lip. Alex had picked up Emma and was whispering something in her ear about getting more dip from the kitchen. "Sarah," I started, but she held up a hand. "No, this is actually hilarious. I mean, Most people get spa days or jewelry or concert tickets, things that are, fun. But you looked at me and thought, what would really make Sarah happy? Financial planning. The worst part was that some of our friends were starting to laugh along with her. Not meanly exactly, but the way people laugh when someone else's awkwardness makes them uncomfortable and they don't know how else to respond. It's not financial planning, I said, my voice getting sharper. It's about supporting your dreams. My dreams? You want to start your own business. You talk about it all the time. So you decided to, what? Bankroll me? I decided to show you that I believe in you. She was quiet for a moment, looking down at the papers in her lap. The room felt like it was holding its breath. This is so typical, she said finally. This is so you, Jake. You see a problem, and you think you can solve it with logic and planning and money. Like my life is some kind of project you can optimize. The words hit me like a physical blow. I felt my face burning, my chest tight with humiliation and anger, and hurt all mixed together into something that tasted bitter in the back of my throat. That's not what this is, I said. Isn't it? You saw that I was unhappy at work, so you secretly saved money to fix me. You didn't ask what I wanted or needed. You just decided. I thought you'd be happy. You thought I'd be happy that you don't think I'm capable of saving my own money. That wasn't what I'd thought at all, but I couldn't seem to find the words to explain the difference. Everything I'd imagined saying, all the explanations I'd rehearsed in my head, felt inadequate in the face of her disappointment. Tom cleared his throat. Maybe we should... No, it's fine, Sarah said, but her voice had a brittleness to it that made it clear nothing was fine. This is just... God, Jake. Sometimes I think you don't understand me at all. I wanted to argue. I wanted to tell her that I understood her better than anyone, that I'd spent 2 months thinking about nothing but her happiness, that every dollar I'd saved had been an act of love. But the words wouldn't come. All I could do was sit there, feeling stupid and exposed, while our friends pretended not to watch this private moment playing out in public. Sarah picked up the box and looked inside it again, shaking her head. A savings account, she muttered. Unbelievable. That's when Emma spoke up. She'd been unusually quiet during the whole exchange, sitting on the floor near her parents, but now she was looking at the box with the kind of intense curiosity that 8-year-olds brought to everything. What's that? She asked, pointing at something I couldn't see. What's what, sweetheart? Priya asked. In the box. There's something else. Sarah looked down, following Emma's gaze, and I saw her expression change. The irritated amusement faded, replaced by something I couldn't quite read. There's something taped to the bottom, she said, more to herself than to anyone else. I felt my pulse quicken. In all my mental rehearsals of this moment, I'd somehow forgotten about that part. Sarah turned the box upside down, and everyone could see what Emma had spotted, a small envelope taped to the bottom interior of the box. Sarah peeled it away carefully, her movements suddenly more deliberate, less performative. What is it? Jenny asked. Sarah opened the envelope and pulled out a single piece of paper. As she unfolded it, I saw her face change completely, the color draining from her cheeks, her mouth opening slightly. Oh my God, she whispered. What? David leaned forward. What is it? Sarah's hands were shaking as she held the paper. When she looked up at me, her eyes were bright with tears. Jake, she said, her voice barely audible. Where did you get this? Everyone was staring now. The tension in the room shifted from awkward to electric. I could feel my own eyes getting wet, though I'd promised myself I wouldn't cry. Your mom gave it to me, I said, before she died. The room went completely silent. Even Emma seemed to understand that something important was happening. Sarah was staring at the paper in her hands like she couldn't believe it was real. This is the business plan I wrote when I was 16. She kept it all these years, I said. In a folder with your school reports and art projects. She gave it to me the last time I visited her in the hospital. She said you'd forgotten about it, but she never did. Sarah's mother had died 8 months ago, after a long fight with cancer that had drained the family financially and emotionally. I'd driven Sarah to the hospital dozens of times during those final weeks, sitting in uncomfortable chairs while machines beeped and nurses spoke in hushed tones. During one of those visits, when Sarah had gone to get coffee, her mother had asked me to come closer to her bed. There's something I want you to have, she'd said, her voice weak but determined. She'd directed me to a box in her bedside table, and when I'd opened it, I'd found folders full of Sarah's childhood memories, report cards, drawings, school photos, and buried in the middle was a handwritten business plan for something called Story Solutions, complete with a mission statement written in Sarah's teenage handwriting, to help small businesses tell their stories in ways that connect with people's hearts. She said you were the only one who really understood her dreams, I continued, the words coming easier now. She made me promise to give this to you when the time was right. Sarah was crying now, real tears streaming down her face as she read her own words from 12 years ago. The plan was remarkably sophisticated for a 16-year-old. She'd outlined services, target markets, even projected costs. At the bottom of the page, in different colored ink, was a note in her mother's handwriting. Sarah, you were born to do this. Never stop dreaming. Love, Mom. I can't believe she kept this, Sarah said, her voice thick with emotion. She kept everything, I said, but she said this was the most important thing because it showed who you really were, even then. Sarah looked up at me, then back at the box, then at the bank statement scattered on the floor. Understanding was dawning on her face, the pieces clicking together. The money isn't for me to start a business, she said slowly. It's for me to start this business, the one I dreamed about when I was 16. Your mom said you'd forgotten about it, but she never forgot. She believed in this version of you, the one who wasn't afraid to dream big. And so do I. The silence stretched out, but it was different now, not uncomfortable, but reverent. Everyone seemed to understand that they were witnessing something private and important. Sarah set the business plan down carefully and picked up my letter, reading it properly this time. I watched her face as she read the parts about how I'd noticed her lighting up whenever she talked about helping small businesses, about how I'd seen her eyes shine when she described the kind of work she really wanted to do. I'd written about watching her sketch logo ideas on napkins when she thought I wasn't looking, about the way she talked about wanting to make a difference in the world. You've been saving this money for 2 months, she said, looking up from the letter. I wanted to give you the freedom to take risks. Not because I don't think you can do it on your own, but because I wanted you to know that someone believes in you enough to invest in your dreams. Sarah was crying harder now, but she was also smiling. Jake, I'm so sorry. I didn't understand. You don't have to apologize. Yes, I do. I was horrible to you, in front of everyone. She looked around the room at our friends who were all trying to pretend they weren't hanging on every word. I mocked something that was incredibly thoughtful and meaningful, and I did it because I was too stupid to understand what you were really giving me. You weren't stupid, I said, moving to sit beside her on the floor. It looked like bank statements because it was bank statements. I could have presented it better. No, she said firmly, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. You presented it perfectly. You gave me exactly what I needed, even though I didn't know I needed it. You gave me my mother's faith in me, and your faith in me, and the means to do something about it. She picked up the brass key from the box, turning it over in her palm. What's this for? Nothing specific. I just thought, keys open doors. She laughed, but it was the good kind of laughing this time, soft and grateful. Of course you did. You beautiful, literal-minded man. The room was starting to feel normal again, the tension dissolving as people realized the crisis had passed and transformed into something beautiful. Jenny was dabbing at her eyes with a napkin. Marcus was nodding approvingly. Even Tom looked moved, though he was trying to hide it behind another sip of wine. Can I see the business plan? Priya asked. I mean, if that's okay. Sarah looked at me, and I nodded. She passed the paper to Priya, who read it with the intensity of someone reviewing a legal document. Alex read over her shoulder, and I watched their expressions change as they took in what 16-year-old Sarah had envisioned. This is incredibly sophisticated, Alex said. Sarah, did you know you'd already figured out your target market and pricing strategy when you were still in high school? I'd completely forgotten about it, Sarah admitted. I wrote it for some entrepreneurship class I took senior year. I thought it was just homework. Your mom didn't think it was just homework, Jenny said softly. Sarah picked up the business plan again, reading it with fresh eyes. I can't believe how detailed this is. I even included a section on company culture and values. She looked up at me. How long have you had this? Since March. Your mom made me promise to wait for the right moment. And you thought my birthday was the right moment? I hoped it would be a good time for new beginnings. Sarah was quiet for a long moment, looking back and forth between the business plan and the bank statements. I could practically see the wheels turning in her head, the way they did when she was solving a complex problem or planning something elaborate. $2,300, she said, reading from one of the statements. It's not enough to start a business, I said quickly. I know that. But it's enough to get started, to take some risks, to maybe quit your job and focus on this for a while without worrying about rent. You save this by making coffee at home, among other things, and eating lunch at your desk. You notice that? I notice everything about you, she said, and the way she said it made my chest tight with emotion. I just don't always understand what it means. She set the papers down and looked at me directly, really looked at me, like she was seeing me for the first time. This is the most thoughtful gift anyone has ever given me, she said, and I almost ruined it because I was too narrow-minded to see past the surface. You didn't ruin anything. I mocked you, in front of our friends. I made you feel small for doing something beautiful. Sarah, no, let me finish. She turned to face the room. I owe everyone an apology. You all just watched me be terrible to someone who loves me enough to spend 2 months secretly saving money so I could chase a dream I'd forgotten I had. And you all were too polite to tell me I was being an ass. You weren't being an ass, Marcus said, though not very convincingly. I was absolutely being an ass, Sarah said firmly. And Jake, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I didn't trust that you know me well enough to give me something meaningful. I'm sorry I turned your gesture into a joke. And I'm sorry I did it in front of people who love us both. The apology was like a release valve for the tension that had been building in the room. I could feel everyone relaxing, settling back into their seats. For what it's worth, David said, that's actually the most romantic gift I've ever seen anyone give. Really? Are you kidding? He studied your dreams, figured out how to support them, and then spent months secretly saving money to make them possible. If someone did that for me, I'd probably marry them on the spot. David, Tom said, you've been single for 3 years. By choice. Everyone laughed, and the mood lightened even more. But Sarah was still looking at me with that expression I couldn't quite read. There's something else, she said suddenly. What? She reached into the box and pulled out the debit card, which had been underneath all the papers. This has my name on it. I had to put someone's name on the account. I figured. I hoped you'd want to use it. Jake. Her voice was soft now, almost wonderstruck. You put my name on a bank account. Well, yeah, it's your money, for your business. No, she said, shaking her head. You don't understand. You put my name on a bank account. That's huge. I wasn't sure why this particular detail seemed to have hit her so hard, but I could see that it had. She was looking at the debit card like it was something precious. My mom used to say that you could tell how much someone loved you by how much they trusted you with their money, she said quietly. Not how much they spent on you, but how much they trusted you with theirs. She sounds like a smart woman. She was. Sarah wiped her eyes again, smearing her mascara slightly. And she would have loved this gift. She would have loved that you remembered her, and that you listened to me even when I didn't think I was saying anything important. She picked up the brass key again, holding it up to catch the light from the Edison bulbs. What am I supposed to do with all this faith you have in me? Use it, I said simply. Build something beautiful with it. Emma had been unusually quiet during the emotional part of the evening, but now she spoke up with the kind of clarity that only children possess. Are you going to start the business now? Sarah looked at her, then at the business plan, then at me. I don't know, she said honestly. It's scary. All the best things are scary, Priya said. Having Emma was scary. Buying our house was scary. Starting my practice was terrifying. But you did them anyway, Sarah said. Because someone believed in me, Alex added. That's what makes the scary things possible, knowing someone has your back. Sarah was quiet for a long moment, staring at the papers spread around her on the floor. The room had settled into a comfortable silence, the kind that comes when people are content to simply be present with each other. I quit my job 3 months ago, she said suddenly. Everyone looked at her in surprise, including me. What? I said. Not officially, I still go to work every day, but in my head I quit 3 months ago. I've been going through the motions, doing the bare minimum, counting down the days until I could figure out what comes next. She looked up at me. You knew, didn't you? That's why you started saving money in September. I thought back to that day in Prospect Park, the conversation about fulfillment, the way she'd looked when she talked about wanting something more. I knew you were unhappy, I said. I knew you were ready for something different. And instead of telling me to be grateful for what I had, or to stick with the safe choice, you started planning how to help me leave. I wanted you to have options. Sarah picked up the letter again, reading sections of it out loud. I know how much courage it takes to chase a dream, she read. I know you're afraid of failing, but I'm more afraid of you never trying. I've watched you light up when you talk about the kind of work you really want to do, and I think the world needs what you have to offer. She looked up at me with fresh tears in her eyes. When did you become so wise? I'm not wise. I'm just paying attention. Same thing, Tom said, raising his wine glass. To paying attention. To paying attention, everyone echoed, raising their glasses. Sarah stood up suddenly, startling everyone. I need to call my boss, she said. Now? I asked. It's Saturday night. I need to quit my job. Like, officially quit. Not just mentally quit. She was pacing now, the energy that had been building all evening finally finding an outlet. If I don't do it now, while I'm feeling brave, I might lose my nerve. Sarah, Jenny said gently, maybe you should think about this for a few days. I've been thinking about it for 3 months. For 3 years, really. Maybe for 12 years since I wrote that business plan. She stopped pacing and looked around the room. You all heard it, right? You heard me complaining about being unfulfilled and wanting something more? We heard you, Marcus said. And what did you think when I complained? That you should do something about it, David said without hesitation. Exactly. But I never did. I just kept complaining and hoping something would change without me having to risk anything. She picked up the debit card again. But this changes everything. This gives me a runway. It's not that much money, I said, worried she was getting carried away. It's not about the amount, she said. It's about what it represents. It's about having someone believe in me enough to put their money where their mouth is. She was right, of course. The money itself wasn't life-changing, but what it symbolized was. It was proof that her dreams weren't silly or impractical. It was evidence that someone who knew her well thought she was capable of succeeding. What would you do first? Alex asked. If you quit your job tomorrow, what would be your first step? Sarah thought for a moment, looking down at her 16-year-old business plan. Update this, she said, tapping the paper. Figure out what's changed, what's still relevant. Research the market. Start reaching out to small businesses in the area. I could help with the business plan, Priya offered. I mean, if you want. I helped Alex set up his consulting practice. And I know about marketing, David added. Different industry, but the principles are the same. I could design a website, I said. Basic stuff, nothing fancy, but enough to get started. Sarah looked around the room at our friends' people who'd known her for years, who'd listened to her dreams and complaints and half-formed ideas. Now they were offering to help turn those dreams into reality. You'd all do that? Help me start a business? Are you kidding? Jenny said. We've been waiting for you to do this forever. Really? Sarah, Marcus said, you're the most creative, thoughtful person we know. You've been talking about this for as long as we've known you. Of course we'd help. Sarah sat back down, looking overwhelmed. I don't know what to say. Say you'll do it, Emma piped up. Say you'll start your story business. Sarah laughed, wiping her eyes again. Story Solutions, she corrected. That's what I called it when I was 16. Story Solutions, Emma repeated solemnly. I like it. You know what? Sarah said, standing up again with renewed determination. I am going to call my boss, right now. Sarah, wait, I said, but she was already heading for the bedroom where she'd left her phone. Don't try to talk me out of this, she called over her shoulder. I'm doing it. We could hear her dialing, then pacing around the bedroom as she waited for someone to answer. The living room fell quiet as we all strained to listen. Hi, Carol. It's Sarah. I know it's Saturday night. I'm sorry to bother you. Yes, everything's fine. Actually, no, everything's not fine. I need to quit my job. There was a long pause. No, I don't have another job lined up. I'm starting my own business. Yes, I know how that sounds. 2 weeks' notice? Carol, I've been mentally checked out for months. You'll be better off without me. Yes, I'm sure. No, I'm not having a breakdown. I'm having a breakthrough. Another pause. Monday morning? Okay, I'll come in Monday morning and we can make it official. Thank you for understanding. No, you really don't need to try to talk me out of it. Okay, I'll see you Monday. Sarah came back into the living room looking flushed and slightly stunned. I did it, she said. I actually did it. How do you feel? Tom asked. Terrified, she said honestly. But also, free? Like I just took off shoes that were too small and didn't realize how much they were hurting until they were gone. She came over and sat beside me on the floor, taking my hand in hers. Thank you, she said quietly, for seeing who I could be even when I'd forgotten. Thank you for being brave enough to become her. We sat there for a moment, holding hands while our friends pretended to be interested in other conversations. The evening was winding down. Emma had fallen asleep on Alex's lap. Tom was examining his empty wine glass with the regret of someone who'd finished something precious, and David was helping Jenny gather up the wrapping paper and gift bags. I should probably start planning, Sarah said, but she made no move to get up. Figure out next steps, make lists, do research. Tomorrow, I said. Tonight is for celebrating. Is it weird that I'm not scared anymore? Like, I was terrified 5 minutes ago, but now I just feel excited? That's what happens when you stop fighting who you're supposed to be, Priya said, adjusting Emma's position on Alex's lap. The fear goes away and gets replaced by energy. Plus, David added, you've got a business plan written by a very smart 16-year-old, a savings account courtesy of your devoted boyfriend, and a support team of people who've been waiting years for you to do this. Don't forget your mother's blessing, Jenny added softly. Sarah picked up the business plan again, reading the note at the bottom in her mother's handwriting. She would have been so proud, she said. She is proud, I said. Wherever she is, she's proud of you for having the courage to remember who you wanted to be. The party officially ended around 10:30, with everyone offering final congratulations and promises to help in whatever way they could. Emma had to be carried to the car, still clutching the piece of birthday cake Sarah had wrapped up for her. David insisted on doing the dishes before he left, claiming it was the least he could do after witnessing the most romantic moment in the history of birthday parties. Tom was the last to leave, pausing at the door with the empty wine crate under his arm. For what it's worth, he said to me, that was the most thoughtful gift I've ever seen anyone give. Thanks, Tom. I mean it. Most people give presents that say something about themselves, how much money they have, how good their taste is, whatever. You gave a gift that said something about her. That's rare. After everyone left, Sarah and I sat on the couch surrounded by the detritus of the party, empty glasses, crumpled napkins, the lingering smell of candles and Tom's expensive wine. The Edison bulbs were still strung up around the room, casting everything in warm, golden light. I can't believe I almost missed it, Sarah said, holding the wooden box in her lap. Missed what? The meaning, the beauty of what you did. She traced the carved patterns on the box with her finger. I was so focused on what I thought a birthday gift should be that I almost completely overlooked what this actually was. What is it exactly? She thought for a moment, choosing her words carefully. It's proof that love isn't just about grand gestures or expensive things. It's about paying attention. It's about seeing someone's dreams even when they've forgotten them themselves. It's also $2,300, I said, trying to lighten the mood. It's so much more than that, she said seriously. It's 2 months of making coffee at home and eating lunch at your desk. It's choosing to believe in my dreams when I'd stopped believing in them myself. It's keeping my mother's faith alive even after she's gone. She set the box aside and turned to face me fully. Can I ask you something? Anything. When you decided to do this to save the money and keep my mom's business plan and plan this whole thing, did you know it would work out like this? I thought about it honestly. No, I said. I had no idea how you'd react. I hoped you'd be happy, but I was prepared for you to think I was presumptuous or controlling or completely missing the point. But you did it anyway. I did it anyway. Why? It was my turn to choose words carefully. Because I love you, I said finally. And when you love someone, you want to give them the world, but you can't actually give them the world. So you give them whatever piece of it you can manage. In this case, it was a savings account and a 12-year-old business plan. Sarah was quiet for a long time, just looking at me with that expression I'd been trying to read all evening. Finally, I understood what it was. It was the look of someone seeing another person clearly, maybe for the first time. I love you too, she said. More than I did this morning, which I wouldn't have thought was possible. More than you did this morning? This morning I loved you for who you are. Now I love you for who you helped me be. We sat there in the golden light of the Edison bulbs, surrounded by the evidence of a perfect birthday party, holding hands like teenagers. Outside, Brooklyn was doing its Saturday night thing, sirens and laughter, and the distant sound of someone's music playing too loud. But inside our small apartment, everything was quiet and perfect and full of possibility. "So," I said eventually, "story solutions." "Story solutions," Sarah repeated, smiling. "Think it has a nice ring to it?" I think 16-year-old Sarah was onto something. I think 38-year-old Sarah is finally ready to find out what. She picked up the brass key again, turning it over in the lamplight. "Keys open doors," she said. "Keys open doors," I agreed. And sitting there in our small apartment with its thin walls and hand-me-down furniture, surrounded by empty wine glasses and the lingering smell of birthday candles, I realized that sometimes the most important doors aren't the ones you walk through, but the ones you finally get brave enough to unlock.